This is Eli Lippman of MOVELA. I want to welcome you to Transit is the Future. This is MOVELA's first virtual transportation conversation. Actually, our 11th annual transportation conversation. In 2008, Denny Zane and a newly formed coalition building organization, MOVELA, hosted their very first in-person event. And together with transit, environmental and labor advocates, elected officials, and others who were just plain tired of LA's traffic. You all believe in that. We hatched a plan for a ballot measure that became Measure R, and along with Measure M, funds transit construction and operations across LA County. This is a forum for big ideas and for bringing LA's diverse constituencies together with policymakers. So thank you for being with us virtually today as we work together to save lives by staying at home, wearing our masks, social distancing, washing our hands when we must make an essential trip. Those hashtags. So why are we gathered today? Because we cannot let public transit become another victim of the coronavirus. Ridership is down and the sales tax and fare box revenues used to fund transit operations are greatly diminished due to the impact of COVID. Before the pandemic hit, public transit in LA across the country faced serious challenges. Ridership was already in decline and promised projects to address inequities, accessibility, safety, and affordability have been discussed but delayed or shelved. We had a lot of work still to do pre-pandemic. So today's event is meant to create a positive vision, a declaration that transit is the future, that foments a movement to save transit today and for future generations. So this is part of a bigger national movement that includes transit rider groups all across the country who are coming together to declare that transit is our future. Together, we developed a set of transit justice principles, and we want to see transit that is equitable, sustainable. If you could advance to the next slide. Economically productive, safe, accessible, and affordable. You can find that full declaration, the principles at transitjustice.org, as well as some of the partner events that have been happening across the country in cities like San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Charlotte, Atlanta. To keep transit moving, experts agree that Congress must invest $32 billion to keep this country's trains and buses moving. While the COVID relief package has been debated in Congress and passed in the House is likely to include some funding for transit agencies and their riders, it's not likely to be anywhere near the amount needed. We need to come together in LA and make the case for saving transit. I'm going to have a 3-year-old join us in a sec. Welcome to Stay at Home. Representing United Front, we can make the case. You can come. Not right now, bud. I've got a couple hundred people on the call listening. We need to make the case to Washington to staunch the bleeding and find a dedicated source of funding for transit to thrive and for our region to fully recover with significant investment. Today, we have an incredible group of speakers to talk about transit as the future. And we want to recognize Transit Center, NRDC, Alliance for a Just Transit Society, the Energy Action Fund, Transportation for America, along with all of our sponsors and supporters that we'll recognize later. We want to thank them for helping us bring you today's program. But before we hear from our speakers, we want to hear from real riders. So we're going to play a short clip. We asked some of our supporters to send in.
Hello, all of you with MOVELA, good friends. What does transit mean to me? It is everything. It is the future of Los Angeles. It's the future of my business. I think it's the future for all of us that want to live in a vibrant city. And why do I care about transit so much? It's because we need to unclog our streets. If we don't have circulation, we are going to come to a stymie, a standstill. We need enough people, not everyone, but enough people in our population to use transit from all different sectors. And the reason that I'm not using transit during this challenge of COVID is because the businesses that I usually see on a weekly basis are not open in downtown LA or Santa Monica or along the corridor. I'm an expo rider and I've only used it a few times. So I think getting the communities back up and running at whatever percentage is going to be a godsend. And I think that we will get the velocity of our community back in tow. A question I'd like to ask of all the officials, I would say just keep transit priority number one among all the other priority number ones that we have. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Cindy Sola, and I like transit because it gets me from hill to sea. Yes, transit is for me. Now, I have a question for you. What can you do to ensure a safe, reliable, and clean transit system that is usable by all people, no matter who they are or where they live? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Virginia Wexman. I am here to talk about public transit. I live in downtown LA and I moved here 7 years ago because it had such good public transit. I am very committed to riding the public transit for a number of reasons. Of course, it's better for the environment. It combats global warming and pollution and traffic gridlock. But I have selfish reasons as well. One is that I'm worried about my safety. And I know there are a lot of car accidents here in LA. If I get into an accident and I'm on a bus or a train, however, I'm much less likely to be hurt or killed. Also, I feel less stress riding the bus or the train. I get very stressed out driving in this town in the traffic, and I get stressed trying to look for a parking place and then trying to find my car when I want to come home. So riding the public transit saves me all that stress. So those are all the reasons that I am very committed to public transit. And though I have avoided it during COVID, I look forward to returning when we are healthy again.
I'd like to now move to our next part. We're going to have some speakers. I'm honored to introduce Eric Garcetti, the 42nd Mayor of Los Angeles and the current chair of the LA Metro Board of Directors. He played a pivotal role in appealing to voters to pass Measure M in 2016. He and I spent a lot of time going and handing out M&Ms to transit riders all over the city. And a little fun fact, both of us studied at the London School of Economics, just at slightly different times. So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I was before Eli, so don't worry about it. But, I want to thank you, Eli, and I want to thank Denny and the entire Move LA movement, not just organization, for the extraordinary work you have done to year by year, decade over decade now, transform the capital of cars in this country and in the world into a place that's focused on transit, on community building, on equity, and all the things which transportation is a prism through which we can refract our quality of life. So thank you for this. I've loved always coming together. It's virtual this year, like everything, and it breaks my heart not to be with everybody in 3 dimensions, but thank you to you, to my fellow elected officials. I know we're going to hear from Representative Torres, and I want to congratulate Hilda Solis, who's not only our vice chair, but she took over as chair of the Board of Supervisors today. So felicidades a mi hermana. Congratulations to Hilda for your extraordinary partnership and leadership as well. And, as well as David Kim, who has been an amazing leader of our transportation agency at the state level, where we finally are breaking down barriers between what's federal and state and local. We're really coming together at a perilous moment. And I can't speak about transportation without speaking about this moment in which a month ago, 1,000 cases seemed still like a lot, but over the weekend, and now we're averaging about 10,000 cases of COVID each day. The surge is filling up our hospital beds to a level we've never seen. Our positivity rates go up even as we have more tests available for people. And this triggered a stay-at-home order from the state on Sunday for most of California. This public health emergency that we're living through is no doubt the toughest moment of our collective lives, especially for those of us who have lost family members. There is no turning back. In fact, estimates are in this next month, we will have the same number of people die as we usually experience in a decade of homicides in Los Angeles. It is going to be a staggeringly difficult moment. But I think the impacts aren't just to our health. We feel it everywhere. We feel it in our economy. We feel it if we're a worker. We feel it if we're a small business owner, a restaurant owner struggling just to stay afloat, a worker who's trying to get some shifts. And we cannot afford to not only not survive this moment, but not to make this moment something big. First, we have to start this week with a clear clarion call from all of us to our leaders in Washington, D.C. Don't you dare go home for the holidays until you've provided relief for America. That is why you are there. That is why we have elected you. Democrat, Republican, Independent, we have elected you to do the people's business. And guess what? When we acted together at the beginning of this pandemic, we did big things. We reduced poverty in America. When Republicans acted like Democrats and gave direct payment to people, and Democrats acted like Republicans and we didn't attach too many conditions to it, we actually did it. And I know that Representative Torres has been a strong voice. She passed in May, along with the majority of the House, the HEROES Act, which should have already gone through. But now we have an opportunity for close to $1 trillion, including for our transit system, to get through and direct aid for those who need it most. Second, though, this is a moment of reimagination. We can't just survive this moment, nor do we want to return to what was before. We have to say transit matters. And I've led a global group of mayors through my chairmanship of C40 say there should be no stimulus that's not a green stimulus in this world. And there has to be a focus on rebuilding public transportation in the cities of the world and for sure in this country as well. At Metro, we're doing so much more than trying to survive this moment. We heard at our last meeting the first customer experience plan, a rethinking of our bus lines for the first time in a couple decades. And I, as chair, and my fellow board members have said loud and clear, we will not sacrifice service. In fact, we're serving more people now than almost any major metro system in the country, percentage-wise. And we cannot allow this to be an excuse for cuts in the out years. We are anticipating that everything from a fair, free transit system that we're trying to prepare for, to looking at the ways that we can address equity, racial justice, in who we hire, how we build, and how we serve with public transportation, expanding programs like Dash to Class to a county, if not state level, that's already proven when you get young people riding for free, they are our future customers. And our next gen bus plan has already started to roll out. And I think I just got the 30-second notice, so I'm gonna go really quick through this. Bus hours have been decreased during the pandemic, but I am fully committed to implementing the service plan laid out in next gen, to not sacrifice that. That has to happen, but we need the dollars. So I know that Representative Torres is on our side. I hope all of you will be a strong voice to get that going. This is the moment not to return, not to respond, but to reimagine, to have that electric bus fleet, to get the construction moving, to accelerate in all parts of this county, from the southeast cities to the San Fernando Valley and more, transit lines that we've been waiting too long, to provide jobs for people and to continue to have that transportation future that Angelenos deserve. Back to you, Eli.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to hold you to that commitment for sure on next gen, but that's why we're here today. And you know, obviously we're in a very tough situation, and an incredible job has been done kind of keeping frankly, as many people as employed as possible with Metro, with the operators. And we have Art Aguilar on here from ATU, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now I'm really honored and kind of excited. We reached out to Congresswoman Torres' office. She represents California's 35th congressional district, and she serves on the House Committee on Appropriations and the Subcommittee specifically on Transportation and Housing and Urban Development. And, you know, I just loved, you know, she was talking about, there's a press release that I saw on transit-oriented development and a lot of great stuff. And she's a former Pomona City Councilwoman, an Assemblywoman, and a labor leader. And a fun fact, she also worked as a 9/11 dispatcher. So I hope she's, I heard she's there. I got a text that she's there. I know she just came from a vote. So I'd like to welcome Congresswoman Torres.
Thank you so much, Eli, and thanks to everyone that is on this call today. Mayor Garcetti, I adore you, loved working with you, you know, throughout my time, not only here in Congress, but as a state legislator. And when we were both on that campaign for President, former President Obama, and I I've worked in Los Angeles, downtown LA, pretty much all of my adult life, downtown LA. And riding the bus for me, Foothill Transit, was a way to commute some of the times. The metro but rail line was also a way to commute. The unfortunate part is that commuters like myself, that we desperately need to move away from single occupant cars on our freeways. It is very unaffordable to ride the train. And it is almost impossible to ride the bus because it takes so long to get from point A to point B. So, riders, I feel your pain. I've done it. And working the graveyard shift for me was just another layer of impossibility of being able to take public transportation. So that is why I've been working so closely with my colleagues here in Congress to ensure that we focus on transit-oriented policies to benefit commuters. The constituents that I represent are driving 40, 50, 60 miles one way to work. So I focus a lot of my attention on helping them. So here's some information about what we have passed so far in the Appropriations Committee. $15 million to fund a pilot program for transit-oriented development, which was something that I put forward. The program will help local governments ensure neighborhood around transit stations are created with ridership in mind. For instance, by having affordable housing close to public transportation options. The House also voted this year on a new 5-year plan, transportation plan, $494 billion surface transportation reauthorization bill. In particular, the Inland Empire residents will benefit from a 72% increase in public transportation investments, a new grant program to support reduced fares for low-income riders, and a new Office of Transit Supportive Communities, specifically intended for regions like ours. It will provide grants and technical assistance for transit-oriented development. We work very closely with our counties and cities to develop this program that we know is needed for them to get that technical assistance to be able to draw down on some of this funding. So I thank you for inviting me to this event today. I thank you for staying in touch with my office, and I look forward to continuing to work with every single one of you to help our mutual constituents get off of those cars and get on public transportation, a transportation program that is reliable and affordable to all working families. Thank you.
We love it. And we love having an advocate like you in Washington. That's exactly what we need, is people who have lived experience being on transit right now. And that's so important. And, I mean, I hope you heard the number earlier, but, experts say that we really need that 32 billion, keep transit running through 2021, just the operations, because it's such a critical public service, and we can't get the economy back if people can't get to work. So thank you for all you're doing. All right, next up, so as the mayor mentioned a little bit earlier, Hilda Solis is actually chairing her first meeting, or chairing their meeting now as the new chair of the Board of Supervisors. So she isn't able to join us live today. She's also the vice chair of Metro. She's also a former Secretary of Labor and a retired member of Congress and a retired state assemblywoman and senator. And a fun fact, she's the first woman to receive the JFK Profile and Courage Award.
Good afternoon. I'm Hilda L. Solis, Supervisor for the Los Angeles County 1st District. And I'm also the Vice Chair of the Metro Board of Directors. Every day I see how much need there is for high quality transit throughout my district and the entire county. Transit ridership for Metro has been slashed in half over the course of the last 9 months, dropping to just over 600,000 weekday boardings from the 1.2 million weekday boardings we saw before the pandemic. Those 600,000 riders that are still taking transit make up the region's essential workforce. They have no option but to take transit. These are the riders that I fight for. Our riders are some of the most vulnerable in our community, and they're facing severe rent burdens and an eviction crisis in the near future. Transportation is and has always been an issue of equity for Angelenos. Our average bus rider has an average yearly income of $18,000 annually. Our residents deserve transit justice, and I will continue working to make public transit better for all. During my tenure at Metro, I have advocated for free and reduced transit for students, transit lines extensions including the Foothill Gold Line extension and the East Side extension, new rail lines like the West Santa Ana branch that will serve the transit desert in the Southeast LA area, new services for the San Gabriel Valley through our San Gabriel Valley Transit Feasibility Study, cleaner air through a clean truck program along the 710 corridor, and stopping the widening and extension of freeways like the 710 North and the 605 freeway and diverting that funding to local mobility projects and transit. But this is not enough. Our riders need more investment, especially during the county's recovery period. The rollout of a fully funded next-gen bus plan is crucial to bring back ridership, as buses are a critical lifeline for essential workers. As former labor secretary, I understand how important public transit is to both providing good paying union jobs and getting people to work so they can make a decent living. As a former member of Congress, I understand the challenges of appropriating funding to public transit when the highway lobby is so strong. Metro expects a $1.8 billion shortfall through the next year due to the pandemic. Assistance from our state and federal partners is needed now more than ever. Advocates across the country must stand together in solidarity for public transit in order to change conversations around how we travel. We must work with the incoming Biden administration to pass a COVID relief package that includes more funding for transit agencies to protect employees, riders, improve service, and ensure the sustainability of our lifetime services. Additional funding will help advance critical initiatives for transit, including the 28 by 28 and our Fairless System initiative. We need your partnership to bring these goals to fruition. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to uplifting our transportation conversation.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are now on to Hillary Norton. She was appointed by Governor Newsom in 2019 and then to the California Transportation Commission and elected by her peers as chairwoman earlier this year. CTC funds the construction of highway, passenger rail, transit, and active transit improvements throughout California, and she's the founding executive director of FAST, Fixing Angelenos Stuck in Traffic, and FastLink DTLA, provides mobility services in downtown LA. She's also the past chairwoman of LA County BizFed. And a fun fact, she was born in Cooperstown, New York. What I love about this, so go ahead, Hillary. You were an advocate, now you're a speaker, so please go for it. All right, we're gonna pin you.
Thank you very much. And it's such a pleasure to follow some of the elected officials that I love so much, and I am so pleased to be a constituent of, like Mayor Garcetti, who is one of the transportation visionaries of this country. Same with Supervisor Solis. I just want to thank you that you have made sure that the state of California is America's pilot program, and you continue to innovate and support a multimodal vision that is second to none in this nation. So I want to thank you for that. And it's just been a pleasure to be your partner, and I appreciate your support in my nomination and now chairwomanship of the CTC. I consider myself a transit YIMBY. And in fact, I have been an advocate for a BRT system that is going to operate, I hope, on Colorado Boulevard, just 250 feet from my driveway here in Eagle Rock. But we have been part of an effort with FAST to establish the very first express lanes in California and certainly in LA County. And the fact that we can now operate a very important multimodal silver line along that corridor that is going to be EV, thank you to Mayor Garcetti and Supervisor Solis. We are excited to support an EV streetcar for downtown Los Angeles, to support wheelchair accessible microtransit, and what we think is going to be really one of the most exciting things, not only a express lanes network, but the next gen bus study, which we've been part of this whole time. Has been, in just this past year, has funded $22 billion in infrastructure projects, not only for freight and transit, but for some local projects, such as $25 million for the next gen bus study, $150 million for the 105 managed lanes. And again, the opportunity to manage those lanes and run good bus service along these corridors and have drivers pay for that new service is very important to us. Also, the EV buses that we have along these managed lanes and a robust Metrolink service. We see our partnership with the city and the county and the entire state as so important. But one of the things that is coming out in our CTC annual report is that we have to have a dedicated funding source from the federal government for transit. We know that we will not be able to recover as a nation and certainly as a state without rehabilitating the transit systems in LA, Sacramento, San Diego, and San Francisco. And because we seek to have expanded service with reduced fares, we have to have a resilient funding source that starts with our federal government, because as Supervisor Solis pointed out, we will never recover as an economy without supporting the needs of the transit dependent. We are talking about lifeline and not lifestyle service. And so the CTC is focused on capacity investments with three things in mind, the 3 M's: managed, multimodal, and meaningful. And so where we fund capacity for freight that has been so important to keeping our promises for reducing gridlock, we also are very proud to say that in the midst of this pandemic, that we are helping to make sure that sales tax receipts stay where they need to be, that we can continue to use those receipts to fund transit, that we can support transit and signal priorities, such as nearly $20 million for Los Angeles for the ATSAC system to look at signal prioritization for transit. We want to be your partner, and we will continue to be the advocates that Mayor Garcetti talked about, that our first, last, and next statements are going to be about the need to start with the $37 billion needed just to fix the hole where we are right now. But now more than ever, in our partnership with CalSTA Secretary David Kim and our local electeds, we want to see that we are going to take this time to realize that federally we have to invest at scale in order to have the transit systems that are going to fulfill the user needs, now that because of this pandemic, people are going to need to get rid of cars because they have rent to pay, they have school debt to pay, they have unemployment that they're not receiving. We need to be aware that 2021 is going to be a high ridership year, because not only is it a great system, but it's going to be that lifeline that we're all going to need because our economic impacts are just so severe. So we look forward to continuing to be the partnership that the state and the local officials need, but we are looking forward to working together to storm DC and to ask for this to be job one, or we'll never get the kinds of transit system we need and that we all want.
I love it. That was great. Thank you. And this is what's so unique about today is we're having this conversation with the federal, state, and local folks. And thanks for teeing it up. We're going to have a call to action at the end where we're going to say, we need you to storm DC. And we're going to get everybody mobilized from the here at MOVELA. So finally, I want to hand it over to David Kim. David was appointed by Governor Newsom also in 2019 as Secretary of the California State Transportation Agency, overseeing 40,000 employees, including Caltrans, the California High Speed Rail, and the Office of Transit traffic safety, among others. I actually just heard we got a new Caltrans director in Region 7, so we're looking forward to meeting him. He also worked at USDOT, so he knows something about the federal government, LA Metro, the locals as well, and for Javier Becerra, whose name is in the news as well. So fun fact, his favorite sport is hockey. So Secretary Kim, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Eli. And I don't know how you found that fun fact, but it is true. I'm a hockey fanatic, LA Kings all the way. It is great to be with all of you, and I'm really honored to share the virtual stage with some truly extraordinary leaders in Mayor Garcetti. And by the way, the mayor and I have Oxy Tigers in common. I was a student at Occidental College, and shortly after I graduated, Mayor Garcetti was Professor Garcetti. I wish I could have stayed there long enough to be a student in his class. It would have been a lot of fun, and I'm sure challenging too. Also, a shout out to Congresswoman Torres. Thank you for your service. She is on the all-powerful Appropriations Committee, which is so critically important for the region. Supervisor Hilda Solis and my good colleague and friend, CTC Chair Hillary Norton. Both of us are appointees of Governor Newsom, and it's great to be able to partner with Hillary on so many important issues. So thank you, Eli and MOVELA, for the opportunity to join you today. I will keep my comments brief. I'll focus on three things: transit, climate, and equity. CalSTA, my department or agency, has been all hands on deck since the pandemic arrived in March. We have approached this on multiple levels and with clear lines of communication between supply chain partners, including the California Transit Association. And one of the first things we did was take swift action to distribute funding from the CARES Act. Remember, that was the bill that passed way back in April. We distributed transit funding to small and rural transit agencies. In fact, we got the first 30 million out the door faster than any other state. And then in April, we awarded 500 million in grants from the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program to 17 recipients up and down the state, including LA Metro. These grants will leverage more than 4.9 billion in additional investment to advance transformative projects and also help with economic recovery. And I think everyone is fully aware that transit agencies are fighting for their survival. They are facing financial disaster because of steep declines in revenue and ridership. But while a lot of things are changing quickly for public transportation, I want to emphasize that its critical role and fundamental importance in our communities will not change. I think we all agree that transit is an essential service and a lifeline that, especially now in this difficult time, it serves employees who have also been deemed essential. Essential workers are relying on public transportation. And one of the more positive notes is that the CARES Act, and again, thank you, Congresswoman Torres, the CARES Act included significant funding for transit agencies. In fact, 3.5 billion for California. And when it passed back in the spring, it allowed systems like LA Metro and others to keep their systems running. But as we all know, these revenue losses are ongoing. It's not a one-time event. And these losses will far exceed any level of funding from the federal government. So it's not a long-term solution. Much more will be needed. And then as pointed out earlier, other stimulus bills like the HEROES Act never made it to the finish line. The House passed it in May, Senate never took it up. And we urgently need another federal stimulus if we're going to make progress with economic recovery. And based on everything I'm hearing over the past few days, we could very well see another relief bill make it before the holidays. And that is really encouraging and good news for everyone. Let me shift gears for a quick moment and talk about efforts that are tied to another emergency, and that's climate change. As you all know, one of the central themes of the governor's recent executive order on climate change is zero emission vehicles. All new car sales must be zero emission by the year 2035. That's a critically important strategy, but we cannot rely exclusively on vehicle technologies alone. Zero emission vehicles undoubtedly are part of the strategy, and we've got to do everything possible to ramp up consumer adoption and acceptance, as well as massively expand EV charging infrastructure up and down the state. And we're going to be doing all of those things. But at the same time, we cannot forget about the other side of the equation, and that is to strongly encourage greater mode shift reduce VMT, and reduce our collective dependence on driving. Bottom line, we're not going to meet our climate goals without making progress on all of these things, vehicle technologies plus mode shift. And so that's exactly what we're doing at CalSTA. And that brings us to an effort called the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, otherwise known as CAPTI. It's a very funny acronym. I welcome your ideas on any other ideas for better acronyms. So CAPTI is part of the governor's first executive order on climate change from last year. It's now being developed with stakeholder input, and it's going to guide the way in which we invest discretionary transportation funds to try as much as possible to prioritize projects that create more travel choices over projects that encourage and accommodate more driving. So that means encouraging and emphasizing as much as we can bike and pedestrian projects, along with transit and intercity passenger rail and other projects that do not increase VMT. Because we have to acknowledge the fact that the traditional practice of prioritizing the movement of vehicles over the movement of people has widened inequities throughout the state. I think we all are aware that vehicle ownership has become an expensive burden and necessity for many Californians, especially those in low income and disadvantaged communities. And we're also taking a hard look at our freight system, how to move goods in a sustainable way that reduces the environmental burden on disadvantaged communities that have suffered from poor air quality for so very long. And so the mission is to build a foundation toward a zero emission freight system, as the governor's executive order highlights. And so we're going to be really focused on that. Also, I just want to briefly mention a bill that passed a few years ago, SB 743, that is now being fully implemented, and it moves us in a very different direction when it comes to measuring transportation impacts of new development projects as well as infrastructure projects. And the purpose of that statute is to make sure that these projects are done in a way that makes it possible to create more and better travel options without relying exclusively on driving. And so this is going to require us to tackle the very difficult question of where and how to invest, like weighing the negative impacts of an increase in driving that a project could potentially produce, and if the benefits outweigh the costs. And so the answer is going to vary from project to project, and we're going to work with all of you and others to figure out solutions as we implement this necessary and long-awaited shift in CEQA.
Excellent.
And so we look forward to working with all of you as we put together this climate action plan for transportation infrastructure. We're going to have a draft available for everyone to look at early next year. And our goal is to finalize that by July 30th of next year. That's the deadline mentioned in the governor's executive order. And so with that, Eli, thank you again, and to MOVELA for the invitation to join you. Appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Well, that was
Thanks.
awesome. And there was so much to unpack there, including that Denny Zane also attended Occidental College. So there's like, you know, and Hillary is across the street. There's like an oxy nexus going on right now. So I don't even know what the mascot is, but go whatever that is. I wanted to also mention, we actually had a Zoom-posium last week on an initiative that we are looking to push forward on climate and clean air. And so we're going to actually have one in January as well. So just teeing that up for folks on the call if you want to join that. We're talking about how we might be able to go to voters in 2022, do the same thing to basically fund these things that Secretary Kim was talking about in terms of climate change, that the mayor's been talking about in terms of climate change. All of these things, we're talking $3 billion a year from California voters. So we've got some interesting resources on that. It's climatecleanair.org. Is the website, so you can check that out. That's for another day. That was last week. This is this week. I would also tee up as well. There's a couple questions about affordable housing and its nexus to transit. We don't have time for that today, but we're going to have another conversation in the spring about what we can do to develop affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. So with that, I want to just quickly say, or quickly ask our speakers, and then we're going to shift to our next panel. Say we get this COVID relief package next week. How do we ensure that that money goes to frontline communities first and those who really need it first? And not everybody has to answer, but real quick, what can we do to ensure that that money is going to get in the hands of the people that really desperately need it the most, and not I don't want to mention the scandal, but we've all read it in the LA Times. Not to people who shouldn't get it.
Well, I'll say this. I know, speaking as chair of Metro, Metro is a frontline community. Our customers are all frontline communities. While we love that anybody can ride Metro and we encourage everybody to, we're really focused on that this is a system of last resort, or a system of need for people who don't have other options. Now, we wanted to get to a system where people say it's the system of first choice as well, no matter what your income level. But if you want to help people who are just trying to make it to a job that they're hanging on to during COVID, give it directly to a transit agency. We've already said where we will put it into. We will put it into that service. We will put it into protecting the jobs of the workers themselves, that if we have to start reducing our hours or our wages or even lay folks off, as we had to do a budget exercise in the city of LA, that's only going to compound the suffering, the people that die, and also how long it will take us. Is this going to be months that we take to get out of this economic depression, or will it be years? And so that money will be well spent right away.
Excellent. I think that's great. That's what we want to hear. All right. You're welcome to stick around. I know you guys are all very busy and have a million things to do, including addressing a public health crisis. And thank you for all the work. My heart goes out to you all. Please stay at home, wear your masks if you have to go out. Thank you to our great panel of speakers. So what we're going to do next is we have a quick little poll and get people on their feet, answer a question for us who's attending. So if we can, okay, I'm going to launch that. And I'm going to allow panelists to vote too if you really want to. It's anonymous. So here we go. We're asking, do you drive more or less or the same since the pandemic? More or less and about the same. Do you take public transit more or less or the same since the pandemic? Do you walk or use other non-motorized transit more or less or the same since the pandemic? And then if you could fund one major change to public transportation in Los Angeles County, what would it be? And it's multiple choice on that one. So go for it. All right. Wow. So 78% of people are driving less. That's a good thing. But 72% of people are taking transit less than they, that's the majority. That's another good thing I see. We know our group, 65% are walking, biking, or using other non-motorized transit more. That's great. And then let's see here. Okay, the most, oh, I got to share the results. There we go. Sorry, you couldn't see that there. Okay, the most chosen, just a hair, is better sidewalks, crosswalks, bus shelters, and stations. Well, that's great. Well, we've got, there's a, the city of LA is considering right now an RFP on better sidewalks and bus shelters. So that's going to be a conversation going forward. Number 2 on that is frequent and reliable bus service. And then number 3 is more metro projects being built faster. All right. Thank you so much for taking the poll there. We are now going to move on to a panel of advocates. So our buses and trains get us to work and school, to worship, to visit family and friends, to shop and see the doctor. They are the thread that connects us all. Transit revitalizes economies. The public transportation industry provides more than 435,000 jobs, and it's estimated that every $1 billion invested in transit creates and supports 50,000 jobs. Transit is how nurses and doctors and caregivers and grocery clerks and other essential workers get to work before and now during COVID. That's why we have over 600,000 people riding our system, back up to half what we were pre-COVID. It's regardless of income. Good transportation, though, is scarce in most of the US today, including Los Angeles. The COVID pandemic is weakening it. So what if those riders don't return and we see these service cutbacks? What if more people drive and there's more traffic and climate and air pollution? Our next set of presenters will hopefully answer some of the questions. Many of these advocates and constituency groups that they represent came together in 2008 and 2016 to pass Measure R and M. LA is really a unique place and we love it. And we're in this sort of unenviable position compared to other transit agencies with 4 dedicated sales tax measures for transportation. So we're not solely dependent upon fare box revenue. We have a lot of dollars to spend on long-term capital projects, operations, and maintenance, all written into those measures. With a new administration and leadership from LA potentially going to Washington, wink, wink, we may be in a position to win big if we come together. So with that, I want to start introducing our panelists. So the way that we're going to do this is I'll introduce the panelists. They'll speak for 2 or 3 minutes about their constituency, and then we'll hear from the next panelist, and then we're going to have a nice, fun discussion. So first up, Ron Miller is the Executive Secretary at the LA Orange County Building Trades and Construction Trades, and also on our leadership board. Ron, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome.
So I appreciate you having me here today. I'm Ron Miller, Executive Secretary of the LA Orange County Building and Construction Trades Council. And I represent 140,000 skilled and trained men and women, many thousands that work on metro projects each and every day. And we're also the folks that are out there on the freeway doing the construction, probably creating some traffic jams here and there, but it's always better once we're done. So we're very proud to be part of this program. We're putting local men and women to work from the community, at the same time building the world-class transit projects that you guys see each and every day in your travels.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, Ron. All right. Next up on our panelist is Tracy Hernandez, the founding CEO of the Los Angeles County Business Federation, BizFed. Tracy, you there? We might have to unmute you.
All right, great. I had to be that one speaker, right? So
no, Patty already broke that seal, so don't worry.
Okay, good. So what is BizFed? BizFed's the LA County Business Federation. So it's a massive network of all the existing business groups in one federation. So like Ron Miller has all the building trades into the LA Orange County Building Trades. We have all the business groups. So we're at 207 chambers of commerce, industry trade groups, minority business groups, you name it. About 450,000 companies employing about 4 million people in the greater LA area. And so we have just come out of the field with a poll reflective of today, in that the pandemic is definitely going to have lasting effects on how people and goods move in our region. Remote work, we specifically polled on, do you plan to continue any of your employees or your system in remote? And surprisingly, 82% said they will continue past the pandemic with some version of remote work, that they found it productive and useful and desirable. And so only 18% say they're going 100% back to work as usual after the pandemic. Everyone else will do some flex schedule of some days remote, some at home, up to, I think we had 16% say they'd stay 100% remote, and everything in between. So obviously that will impact our climate and our gridlock, all pertaining to transportation and solutions. And of course, you know, the business community has been a long supporter of tackling transportation solutions. We supported Mayor Villaraigosa and Measure R, and Mayor Garcetti and Measure M, and the state SB1. We've gone to Washington a lot for full funding grant agreements for transit. So we're all in for more effectively moving our people around. One of the other lasting effects post-pandemic that will change how we tackle our transportation needs is consumer demand for product delivery to the doorstep. Consumer demand for product delivery to the doorstep. So as you know, I'm sure everyone on this call, if I asked, have you had your food or your pet food or your clothing or prescriptions or office supplies or home decorations delivered to your doorstep because you ordered online and it went through various transit mechanisms, but ultimately was on a truck on streets right to your driveway or your door, your apartment building? The answer is yes. And that's not going to go away. That will change needs. When we pulled specifically on top transportation issues, the number one issue that business owners and leaders say is we still need to invest in roads and streets to keep them in good repair so that people and our equipment and are safe and reliable and accessible. And of course, expanding our money, getting more bang for our buck using P3s, public-private partnerships, so that the private sector helps fund the public sector so we can get more. And Eli, we have 5 of the issues that you put out in the recommended policies jumped out, and I can go through those later, but there's some real specific things at the local, the state, and federal level that we would, of the policies you've drafted today, that we could comment on. And I'll do that a bit.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so I'm back. I got, my internet went for a second there. Okay, great, thank you. So we have representation from our big labor organizations, our business organizations. What would, I want to ask you to, like, what would you want to see, you know, in federal relief funds, and looking further ahead as well, when we look at transportation reauthorization, what is critical for the labor community and for the business community? Ron, if you want to go first.
Well, some things that are important for us is, first, I want to congratulate Chairwoman Hillary Norton on her, she's been there about a year, I think, and she's done great work for the city of LA, bringing home dollars. And so congratulations on all your hard work there. But along with that, she mentioned managed lanes on the freeways. That's part of the work that we have to do, and that is highway work. But at the same time, it's a meld of transit work and highway work, because it involves creating good atmosphere, good travel lanes for buses, and increasing, knocking down the commute times for buses. But also we need to have dollars put in to build affordable housing along the transit ways and around the stations. It's the most logical place to build affordable housing and dense transit housing to create that walkable community around the stations. And that's what we do. We build those kind of projects, but also we want to get our members living in those areas and build that affordable housing to where we can have folks get out of their car and use the transit system. It makes everything work. So that's 2 of the issues that I see is very important to us. And you know, Metro has done a good job. We do have a couple of large projects coming up that fit that bill. And we are working, labor is working hand in hand with Metro to try to get our pension funds involved in those public-private partnerships that Tracy mentioned. So everybody is working here together, and we just need to carry on our good work.
Love it. I love it. I like when we all work together. Tracy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, I mean, as an example, one, I completely agree with Ron on those items. And I would say at the federal level, what we can do. So locally, Metro, we have done a really good job of planning best use of our money for existing and new projects for throughput. So I would say hold true to the deal we made with taxpayers. So we made a deal with taxpayers for Measure R, Measure M, and SB1 funds. So let's hold true. They are stepped up and have given a lot of money. That has been well planned. And so how does the feds help? Well, they help by funding infrastructure packages in the highway bill on time every cycle, rather than this, getting caught up in a continuing resolution and just sort of a sidebar. They haven't been able to get the deal done for some time. So I'd say in California, especially in Southern California, we already know how to spend the money. We can put it to use very quickly. We have priorities and agreement among the stakeholders. So the feds just need to fund the existing highway fund and infrastructure bills federally on time.
And that's such a good point, is like, I would say compared to other regions in the country, like we are in a great position because we're doing the EIRs. We have the infrastructure here. We have the labor force, right? We are already in planning for so many projects and doing outreach and compliance, right? Because we have that long range fund. And so not only would the federal government be leveraging its money better because we have the local sales tax, like that money would go to use right away, right? And that was something that really frustrated me about our recovery the last recession, was that we lagged behind everywhere else. And so I think if we're working together, we can actually jump ahead in terms of recovery because we are so ready to do that. I wanna thank you both. I want to pass it over now. We're going to talk a little bit on on the service side of things. And so we're going to talk with some folks who advocate for better service. So I want to introduce Autumn Elliott. She is litigation counsel for Disability Rights California. And we saw this great video. I love Cindy. A little story about Cindy, who we saw in the opening video. She traveled from her home in Long Beach almost 3 hours to Measure M rally in North Hollywood. She left at like something like 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, her dedication to public transit is fantastic. So Autumn, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities from the disability rights community?
Thank you. So I wanted to pick up on something that Secretary Kim said, right, which is that prioritizing vehicles and prioritizing people driving alone in a vehicle creates equity issues. And that's very much true for people with disabilities. Access to public transit is an equity issue because a lot of people with disabilities driving their own personal car isn't something that works for them. And so cuts to public transit have a different and greater impact on people with disabilities who, when those options are removed, don't have as much flexibility. As well, a lot of people don't think about the fact that the paratransit system, which is a system for people who, because of their disability, can't take standard transit, is only as wide a scope as the standard transit system. So if a bus line gets cut to a particular community, it's not just that fixed route bus line, but also the paratransit to that community as well. So while we're typically advocating for as much accessibility as possible, so things like improving the accessibility of legacy rail lines, or ensuring that the public right-of-way is accessible. So for example, that sidewalks have curb cuts so that people who can't get up over a curb because they use a wheelchair or have other issues. Right now, the cuts that the public transit system as a whole are facing are really our top priority, because those will create serious inequities for people with disabilities.
And I think, I mean, I'm a parent, and I feel it sometimes when I can't get in an elevator or I can't go over a curb because of the stroller. But for somebody I mean, I can, I come up with a solution, but somebody with a disability, that is their only solution. So I appreciate it. Autumn, this is great. I want to also talk about how service cuts impact our great operators, and how this whole COVID crisis is impacting our operators and the folks that are actually getting us to and from where we need to go every single day on the front lines. They are frontline workers themselves, and I think we sometimes forget that. We're really excited to have Art Aguilar. He's the chairman of the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, California Conference Board, and president for ATU Local 1277. Art, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Good. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to join today. It was very enlightening already. Brother Ron and I have worked together on many issues. Unfortunately, I have to disagree with Ms. Hernandez. Is as long as the 3Ps project is for design, build, and finance, instead of design, build, and operate, that's where I have a disagreement because it's taking away public jobs. Many people do not understand the difference in the 3Ps. So if they're design, build, and finance, I'm with you, and let's continue the public jobs. And the reason why I say that is, first of all, I represent just at 1277, 4,000 men and women who proudly serve Southern California, from the Salton Sea, Long Beach, Riverside, and Los Angeles. Also throughout the state, a small number. Ron's got a big chunk, and my hat's off to him for dealing with it. But I only represent 13,000 men and women who provide service from handicap, the turnaround in private sector transportation, the public sector transportation, also the maintenance workers on both sides of the fence. And unfortunately, we are facing layoffs up north. As mentioned earlier, you have BART, you have San Francisco Muni, who are going to cut jobs because there's no funding coming in. So we definitely need to get more funding in for transportation. However, and like you just stressed, our brothers and sisters are going to work every day, not knowing who's getting on their bus, who's getting on their paratransit vehicle with the disease potentially. Yet they still continue to go to work. Unfortunately, with this increase that just happened in the last week prior to yesterday, or up to yesterday, I had 24 positive men and women that came down with the COVID. Just today, I've had 10 additional. In Riverside Transit, they're now testing because of Cal OSHA, which we appreciate, put in rules and regs that when you have 3 positive within a 48-hour notice, they have to test all the employees on the property. As of right now, we've only had 2 come out positive. But yet our brothers and sisters keep going to work. Why? Because they feel it's important for them to be there to get other people to work. Now, you want to talk about mass transportation. We're on board with that, of course, because it's going to give us more members, but it's going to provide a service. Now, I grew up riding the transportation since my father worked for the company when I was 12 years old. I used to take the bus from Indian Hill and Holt to Los Angeles every day. We used to ride the bus. I had to be there at 4:30 in the morning to get to school by 7:30 in the morning. We did it to and from. So I know riding the transportation. The problem is we're not providing a service that's equitable to everybody, meaning within 5-minute headways or 10-minute headways, getting the bus there. A lot of the transit agencies want to do more with less. And that's the problem that I am facing. I've been a member and an employee for MTA for 31 years. I've been an officer for 17 years. I've seen upper management come and go with brilliant ideas and not so brilliant ideas. I love the fact that they have the project labor agreement with the buildings trade. Give us a project labor agreement, because when you're not paying the wages, when you're not providing the benefits, you're going to get what you offer. You're going to get little or no education people that are going to try to provide a service. And unfortunately, I don't like the way MTA does their things when they privatize out the work. They're still driving the same color bus schemes with us, and we get hit. How come your bus's wheels fell off? How come your bus caught on fire? And when I ask them, give me the number of the buses, and I find out that's not an MTA true bus. That is a private contractor's bus. So we're here to provide a service. The express lanes, back in the day, all we're on there were buses, no cars. So you were on time. Now, because you don't know how many cars are going to get onto the system, it may hold you up. But we definitely need to support, get more funding, get more operators to continue to come into work because they're getting sick. Let's provide them the proper PPEs, the barriers, the HEPA filters, sanitizing of the vehicles. We only sanitize them once a day. So it's something we need to work on, but I'm all on board.
Awesome. Well, and that I think is what the 32 billion is going to help with, is that PPE and ensuring that these vehicles are clean, both for the riders and for the operators. And so I heard a little bit of disagreement between with the business community, and that's okay. We all love each other, and that's why we're all Angelinos. We're all in this together, and I think that's a good, healthy conversation. But I also heard some real threads here in terms of what Autumn said and Ron said, in terms of equity and what Tracy said. And I want to keep on that thread and kick it over to Scarlett DeLeon, because just as you were saying that the drivers, the operators coming in because they feel it's important to get these people to work. Scarlett works with at Alliance for Community Transit, and they've been pushing and saying, you know, we need to provide service that is equitable. So Scarlett, can you talk a little bit about the impact that service cuts have had on some of the riders that you work with?
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, so Act Delay for the past 2 years has been talking to transit riders and organizing a core group of transit leaders. And with their leadership, we developed our own transit justice vision, which I want to share with you because I think it's super relevant still. The vision is: Metro is a sanctuary for the public. The train plus bus are fearless and consciously part of the city and integrated into people's daily lives and neighborhoods. Metro serves the public as libraries do, a public system where people go to feel safe, access information, and receive a high level of service. Metro feels honored to serve youth of color and be a resource for all. Los Angeles is proud of our transit system and how we have embraced a healthy, safe community serving a world-class transit system. And in order to achieve that vision, we identified that one of the main things that needs to happen is that Metro must divest from its ballooned policing contract, where they're paying for police overtime, and instead invest in bus service, bus infrastructure, community-led safety alternatives to policing, and free fares. This was true before the pandemic, but it continues to be true. So I would have to disagree with Mayor Garcetti when he said that if money comes to Metro, it automatically benefits low-income communities of color. I don't think that's true. Metro must prioritize its spending. When Metro decided to cut bus service in the beginning of the pandemic, they exacerbated many of the issues our transit riders face while navigating the system. We continue to hear from transit riders about long wait times and overcrowded buses that do not allow for social distancing. While before, a bus that did not come meant the potential to miss a job interview, childcare, late fees, late to work, etc., which is a health issue on its own. That stress now is on top of a pandemic. A crowded bus is not only uncomfortable and impossible for some to navigate, but now it is also a risk to their lives. Metro's current load limits of 75%, someone in every other seat, and 10 people standing, A, do not allow for recommending social distancing of 6 feet, and B, do not take into account additional room needed to protect the operators. These cuts not only hurt the most vulnerable communities of Angelinos who have been consistently overrepresented in the city buses, but they also jeopardize Metro's ability to carry out its next gen bus plan to respond to the crisis of falling transit ridership across the region, an issue that has long predated arrival of COVID. So we are very concerned with ongoing and reliable service will mean for the transit system's recovery. And most of all, we are extremely concerned about all the transit riders who have no choice but to be on the system while COVID is peaking and we enter the flu system. Metro must do all it can to protect its transit riders and bus drivers safely. And I think it starts with them prioritizing it on their budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I agree with you. That's why I asked that question to the mayor and others, because I wanted to hear them say it and put it on the agenda, because we have to hold them to that. What I loved about, I don't know if you heard what, and that was beautifully said, I love what you guys are talking about Metro as a sanctuary. It's such a great concept. And when I heard Virginia talk about how she's less stressed on the bus or on the train because she doesn't have to worry about getting in an accident on driving our streets. That's the vision of transit that I ascribe to and we want to see. So thank you for that. I want to kick it over now. I'm really honored to have Jackie Alcala here on the call today. She is a Pierce College student transit rider and a LA College Promise and Maya Scholar. And we met yesterday, and we were just talking about her, her use of transit, and we just had a really great story. And I wanted to bring it down to that really, we've been really high level, federal, state, local, down to the advocates. But I really want to hear from a transit rider, because they're the most important in this, about their experience. So, Jackie, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for having me. I have been really enjoying the conversation that's been going on so far in regards to how we can make transit better for Angelenos and for students like myself. I'm currently attending Pierce College, and as Eli mentioned, I am an LA College Promise Scholar and a Mayor's Young Ambassador. And I wanted to start by thanking Mayor Garcetti for everything he's done to support community college students and just students in general, and also Supervisor Solis for everything that she's helped with in combating homelessness and helping students like myself and others just meeting their basic needs. So last semester before COVID, I was fortunate enough to receive a UPass through the LA College Promise program, which allowed me to basically ride the bus for free for about a semester. Usually the cost of a bus pass for an adult like myself would be around $160. And it's sometimes you have to pay it up front, and it's something that, a lot of students do worry about, like how they're going to get to school. So through this program, many of these bus passes were granted to students just like myself. I've been utilizing public transportation pretty much my whole life, and it's really helped my educational journey so far. And I feel like this fairless system that we've been doing during the pandemic has really helped out communities and students like myself who don't have to worry about where's the money going to come from to purchase a bus pass. There have been many challenges that have arisen during this COVID pandemic, such as the reduced scheduling. There aren't as many bus lines running, and when they are, as Scarlett mentioned, sometimes very crowded, and there's not really room for social distancing. I feel like if we branch out and provide and include more people into getting free bus riding services, more people will feel inclined to take the bus, and they will look at that as a reliable way to transport to work or to school or anything like that. That's much better than taking a Lyft, say, or an Uber, which isn't that great for the environment. If we provide the service for more people will feel more inclined to take the bus. So yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts and my experiences. I really appreciate, the UPass, and not having to pay for a bus pass has been a great help. And I can only hope that we can help out more students with programs like these.
Yes, thank you so much. And I saw Art shaking his head yes to that, and others. We're working really hard. I mean, we, one of our programs we talked about yesterday is this UPass program, and trying to figure out a way to make it as ubiquitous or not as ubiquitous as we'd like, but as open access as health insurance to all community college students, so that everybody has a transit pass if they're a community college student in LA, so that they can travel to job, travel to school, travel to visit family, obviously when we're not sheltered at home. And so we think that is just a way to access the world for students, and we're really pushing hard for that, and grateful to the mayor and Supervisor Solis for their support. So thank you, Jackie. Wonderful to have you here. I want to kick it over now to get the perspective. Let's see, what do we got here? We're going to go from youngest, well, not youngest, but student to those representing older Americans. So we have Luis Campillo. He's from ARP California, and they were huge. I mean, they invested $1 million in support of Measure M. And the idea of aging in place is a huge thing for ARP. And so we want to hear from Luis about the challenges that older Americans also face when service is reduced.
Great. Thank you, Eli. Thank you for having me. I'm Luis Campillo. I'm the regional manager for ARP California, here representing for Stephanie Ramirez, who is our transportation champion. I know that she's currently chairing her first Metro PAC meeting, so that's why I'm here as her substitute. But thank you so much. It's great to see so many partners in this important transportation work. I think for ARP California and ARP in general, the bottom line is that we want to make sure that we center any transit planning and investments on older adults, as well as underrepresented, underinvested in communities, because we know that that really makes a difference. We have 3.3 million members here in California, 38 million members across the country. And we really are leveraging not only being in community, but also our national presence to advocate for communities to be more livable, more age-friendly. And we know that key in that is transportation. So we know that transportation is a key link for not only older adults, but everybody in the community to live healthy lives, to be able to go about their business, whether it's going to work, dropping grandkids at school, or going to volunteer somewhere else. So we really are focused on transportation and understanding that we need to not only deal with the current situation where older adults were heavily impacted by COVID-19, and particularly those folks who live in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities, but also appreciating the fact that in just 10 years, the first millennials will start turning 50, that by 2034, the same date of the electric vehicle order, that older adults, those 65 and over, will be a larger portion of the population than those under 18. So there will be about 23.4% of the population versus 19.8% of the value of the population. So really looking at a long-term vision of what we need to do, not only around transportation, housing, open spaces, and some of the other elements that make a community a great place to live. Again, we know that COVID has highlighted so many inequalities. So we know that a Latina woman in her 30s and 40s right now, who's taking care of her kids or taking care of an older relative, may have had to leave the workforce as a result. Her health, her retirement future has been impacted. So how can we make sure that investments in transportation and making sure that we also look as a society as to how we don't discriminate against those older workers who are going to be re-entering the workforce, and we know that they're going to have a more difficult time doing so. But I would like to end with the fact that here at ARP, and that's my timer, we look at also the positives about aging, right? So what a 50-year-old looks now is very different. We also know that there's this thing as the longevity economy. So older adults are not a drain on a local community or any community at all. They actually are an asset. They bring their experience, they bring their consumer buying power, they bring all the support that comes with Social Security, Medicare, and some of the other programs. They're volunteers, they're voters, they're property owners. So we also are talking about that message that is not only the right thing to do, but it's also the economic right thing to do for communities as we look for a COVID-19 recovery in 2020 and beyond, 2021 and beyond.
Well, I think you make a really good point is older adults are more susceptible to this. And if they're not going to get back on transit and some folks with underlying conditions as well, are not going to get back on transit if they don't feel safe, right? If they feel like it could be a risk for their health. And so 32 billion that they're talking about for transit is so critical because it ensures that we continue to run service so that there is the ability for, so that we aren't overcrowding and so that we aren't bunching people up too much when we're running enough service. But on the flip side, and this I want to kick over now to my friend and well, you're all my friends, but Jessica Meany, I'd love to hear a little bit from you. Just some real talk. She's the executive director of Investing in Place. And we had a COVID relief package that was passed in March, and it was supposed to keep service from being cut. Yet we still saw service cuts at Metro. And so, how do we ensure as advocates, I would say, we tried to today to push our elected leaders to get on the record, but how do we ensure that even if they do get that money and we go and advocate for it, that all of a sudden they go and say, well, oh, we still don't have enough money. We have to cut more. So you don't have to answer the question, but I'm sure you're thinking in that direction already.
Yeah, I am. I have a lot of doubts. And even Eli asked me to be on this panel, I said, I don't think I'm the right person. I'm really skeptical.
I twisted your arm.
Well, hello, everyone, and hello, friends and partners and former colleagues and all of the above. It's nice to see everyone. And thanks, Eli, for hosting us all. I worked tremendously hard on Measure M to see it be our first county transportation ballot measure fund active transportation. It had a set aside, none of which has been spent 4 years later. Metro's accountability on the promises that they've made to serve high need communities and improve buses just haven't been kept in my mind. And I really think that when I think about, I've been looking for studies on 2009 ARA relief funding and really did it achieve the relief for people most impacted by the recession? And anything that's a recovery for COVID, how is it targeting the high need communities? I just saw LA Times push notification for Latino double rates of COVID. And I just think that, the big push with ARA was what's shovel ready? And I have a deep concern that what's shovel ready at Metro does not get at the needs that our communities need and are suffering from during COVID and not being able to work, not being able to be paid, stay at home. So I just have a lot of questions. I certainly want to see Los Angeles region receive federal support during this crisis. But I think that we on this call need to be asking real questions about where it's going and for who and why. And just over the past few months of the pandemic, it's been incredibly challenging to see Metro be transparent with budgets, with decision-making, and really respecting the needs of riders. For those of you might not know, LA region had the least amount of transit ridership loss across the country, because as a couple of people said it, who rides the bus in LA? They have no other choices. And the ridership is even spiking in corridors like Slauson, San Fernando Valley, South LA. So I just have a lot of deep questions. Metro's given a lot of talk about equity and prioritizing high need communities over the years, but we've yet to see resources dedicated. So I have just more questions than answers. And really, I think any federal relief, I want details on who this prioritizing and why and how it's different from just status quo. Because again, what's shovel ready right now, I don't think is what's going to get us out of this recession. So, but thanks everyone. Carter, on to you.
Yeah, that's a good note. Thank you. And you're right, Carter. And I apologize. I know we're running a couple minutes behind, so thank you for sticking around. I think that is exactly right. And one of the things that I'm going to be looking to as we work this on the national level is how we can put standards in for things like, as Art mentioned, project labor agreements, for instance, but also local hire. But also ensuring that the money is being allocated on issues of equity first, right? So the federal government can say, okay, here's this big chunk of money for transportation, but we're only giving it to you if you have real and honest equity metrics. And then the other thing too, that I think we have to push on, especially with this administration, which talked about so much on climate, is the sustainability impact. So how do you put actual metrics and measurements on the dollars that are going out in terms of sustainability? Yes, hashtag transparency. Hashtag, what was the other hashtag that we had? Hashtag Storm DC, or was that? Yeah, Storm DC. So on that, I would say, okay, and Carter, how do we bring it all home, man? New dad, Carter Rubin, he works for NRDC and the America Cities Climate Challenge. How do we ensure that those dollars go to sustainability first?
Thanks, Eli, and thanks to the whole MOVELA team for having me here. It's great to be able to close it out. I'm thrilled that 100+ of us are still here having this conversation. I think we have this acute transit funding crisis brought on by COVID-19. People are, avoiding unnecessary trips, and that means our fare box revenue is declining, and our local sales tax revenues that support our transit investments are going down. And so there is a short-term funding gap. We need to plug that. We need federal and state help. We can't do it all on our own locally. And I think in the long term, yes, we need to grow the pot of money that we invest in our transportation system. But I think, as many of the speakers have touched on, we need to align how we spend our money with our values. And I think we are hurtling on a status quo trajectory that puts more and more money into wider freeways and streets that are not safe for walking, and investments that make it harder to be a transit rider. And I really appreciated Secretary Kim in particular highlighting the work he's leading the state level to realign state transportation funding, to shift where we put 80+% of our investments into projects that, widen freeways, increase our climate emissions, hurt local air quality, and begin to align that with our climate goals, which, we can start to align with our equity goals and our transit ridership goals. And so, I think what I hope folks take away from this is not just that we need more money, but that we need to take a hard look at how we invest our money and shift it to, support investments that can make it healthier and safer communities for all of our Angelinos and our neighbors.
Awesome, Carter. That's exactly. I mean, that's great. That's what we need to hear and what we need to be focused on. I want to, so we still have a little bit more of the program. We're going to have a call to action to save public transit, but I want to give any of the speakers any opportunity to add anything that they wanted to add or respond to anything that they thought was really critical. I want to give you that opportunity. So just unmute yourself. We'll try not to talk over each other. But yeah, anyone? No, all good?
I want to shout out the concept from Mary Daly in the comments of, investing in ready to roll projects and service. Shovel ready is good too, but we should think about, all the drivers and operators who are ready to run more service to help people get where they need to go on the bus.
Love it.
And Eli, I'd also support several speakers' comments about there's a difference in investment to get a bit faster and a bit more stops and a bit more access than starting from scratch on something completely different. So, I would just advocate too, when we're talking about dollars, that more service, quicker service, reliable service, going to the places we need is what everyone says constantly. And so we should really double down on getting that all really functioning at a high level first, maybe before starting something from scratch or brand new, is a way to think about best use of money, limited money.
Yeah, it is always limited. I mean, we look at Measure M and say, oh my gosh, so much money, but there's limits to that. It gets allocated very quickly. So they say. All right. Well, you guys, you all have been great. Thank you, Hillary, too, for sticking around. Please don't leave just yet, attendees. We have one last little bit, our call to action, but I want to hand it over to Danny Tabor, who is just going to real quick thank our awesome sponsors for supporting this program and all of our work and keeping great staff at MOVELA employed. Danny, you're on.
Even before I do that,
I forgot to mention Danny Tabor, former mayor of Inglewood, community activist, and the president of the MOVELA Leadership Board.
and as you can tell behind me, I'm faculty at Los Angeles Trade Tech College. So I'm really, really proud of Ms. Akala and her work as a student making it through the city and on public transit to in this distance learning environment. But let us begin with giving Eloy Littman a great round of applause for leading us through the day. Eloy, I think, there you go, for sure. I hadn't seen the beard, Eli, so I'm glad to finally get to see you again.
Well, I'm just
I
glad
want
my
to thank.
kids didn't run in here screaming. So
There you go.
my
There you
wonderful
go.
wife for keeping them entertained.
And well, we've all, well, I should say most of us have had that experience of trying to do a little daycare work while we're trying to take care of a little business work. It is unique that we find ourselves talking about transit at a time when we're supposed to be shut down. But the reality is transit is going to be the connecting force that brings us all back together. Public transit. I've got classmates from my years of attending high school in Inglewood that are drivers and have been driving for Metro. Just last week, taking the bus out to Long Beach, I ran into on a Long Beach transit line, ran into a driver who stopped me and said, "Hey, I know you. You're my councilman." I said, "Well, not anymore. I'm not, but thank you for remembering me." So we know that the backbone of Los Angeles is our transit system. It brings people from all walks of life together. So I want to thank not just the folks who were participating, but clearly you, the speakers and presenters today, that brought the real story to us about what is important, whether it was from the business sector, labor, the transportation sector. Hillary, congratulations. I haven't seen you since you ascended to a chairpersonship, so congratulations there. Let all your friends that are back here in LA know you're rolling big. And Tracy, you've been working there with a good buddy of mine, fraternity brother of mine, Kevin Harbor, for some time, and I have to stop in when we can get back out and say I miss being able to get around to see folks. But let me also thank. We've got an anonymous donor who came in at the platinum level. Resources Legacy Fund, the Transit Center, Annenberg Foundation, Roy and Patricia Disney Foundation, Clean Energy, the Durfee Foundation, SoCal Gas, all came in as platinum sponsors to make this day happen. At the diamond level, BYD, the Carson Foundation, and at the gold level, Southern California Edison, the Energy Action Fund, Bloomberg Philanthropies, American Cities, Climate Change Partner, Glenn Dake and Renee Dake Wilson, Sue Hemrich, and Michael Soloff. All of you have made this day possible, and thank you. Thank you. Our work is not done. As Eli indicated, we've got a number of conversations about clean air and about affordable housing. Ron mentioned that we've got to get back to that discussion about affordable housing near transit. I agree. And my final point is I'm going to borrow something from my buddy Denny Zane. We've got to get our mojo back, and we can get our mojo back when the federal funding comes in ready, not just for those that are shovel ready, but as the speakers have said today, those that are people ready. The people make the transit moves the people.
That was great, Danny. And, Tracy asked me, on the prep call, she was like, "So where's your straw man?" Because we always have a straw man for this event. And I promise you, we're going to have some straw men coming out, to straw creatures, as we like to call them, to keep you guys, active and engaged and interested. Right now, we're trying to really focus on this opportunity, right? We have this unique opportunity, I think, where Los Angeles is in the spotlight for many reasons, and we need to act to get as much federal funding as we can get that's equitable, that's sustainable, that support good jobs, that supports our operators, that supports our transit riders. So what's going to happen next is after this meeting, I'm going to start reaching out to our federal elected representatives and start scheduling meetings, essentially, to talk about this stuff. We don't want this just to be one person in the room. We want you, those who are on this call, treat this like a training, right? We want you to also participate in that because as we know, constituents matter. We want to create a movement to support $32 billion in federal relief funding for emergency funding for transportation. We're going to follow up with an email on more details. You can also email me directly. I'll post that in the chat. But longer term, look for an invitation, a couple of events. We got one on our climate and clean air initiative cut up in January, but we also want to talk about reauthorization. We teed it up a little bit for transportation. This is from 2022 to 2027, the federal reauthorization, several $100 billion in money dedicated, and we want to push for dedicated funding for transit operations, significant investment in major intercity transit systems to recover, create jobs, build and rebuild infrastructure, remove fare box recovery as a barrier to funding equity, increase public transit funding to match highway funding, and standards for climate, equity, and workers. We'll also be weighing in on the appointments of the secretary and administration officials related to housing, transportation. So we want your involvement. We need your engagement. We need this to be more than just us here. We need a lot of people talking, because that's when our representatives listen. I just got an email from Norma, Congressman Torres' office of, hey, that was great. Let's set up a meeting. So this is working. We need your support. Again, thank you, everyone. With that, again, please stay safe out there. And let's leave with a moment of silence for all of the people who have died due to this COVID-19 pandemic, especially our transit operators, but everyone in the state and across the world who have been impacted by this terrible, terrible disease. So thank you all, and have a good afternoon. As Danny said, amen. I feel like far too many people have not had a real opportunity for closure with their families. So I think it's good for us all to just think of those families. So we'll stick around for 2 or 3 more minutes if anybody else has any comments in the chat, but otherwise, that's it. Safe holidays, everyone. Happy and safe holidays.
Happy holidays.